I decided about 6 months ago that I never want to be good at yoga. I never want to compete with anyone or compare my practice to anyone else's. I just simply want to have a practice from which I derive benefit.
My name is Eddie Stern. I'm a yoga instructor. Stretch the arm. If I see a place where yoga would be helpful and someone invites me to do something, I say yes. That's all there is to it. What is your name and your profession?
My name is Moby. I'm a musician.
And what form of yogas have you practiced?
Well, years ago, my friend Eddie, who is you, this was probably like 25 years ago. Am I allowed to say he or you? About 25 years ago.
I like to talk about myself in the third person.
So. Me too. I usually refer to myself as the Moby, so you could say like, well...
The Eddie?
Yeah. So 25 or 26 years ago, my friend Eddie had just started teaching, and I went to one of his classes, and I was not allowed to go back because I just kept laughing. And then I had a good, I'd say 18 years where I did no yoga at all. And then my same friend Eddie taught me a very simple Ashtanga practice that I started doing in hotel rooms on tour. And then, ironically, I was out to lunch with a bunch of yoga teachers. We were at a vegan restaurant, and it was at a big table. I had to go to the bathroom, but I didn't want to make everyone get up from their seats, so I crawled under the table, and in crawling under the table, I popped something in my back. I just think it's kind of ironic that I hurt my back at a lunch with yoga teachers at a vegan restaurant. For the next 9 months, my back really hurt. And I kept thinking, like, it's going to get better, it's going to get better. And it didn't. And I tried massage, I tried acupuncture, I tried all sorts of things. And then I was on tour, and I think I was in an airport, and I saw this. I don't want to do any sort of like product endorsement, but I saw this thing called the Yoga Deck. And I just randomly grabbed this yoga deck, and I had a day off in Brazil, and I started doing the practice in the yoga deck. And I don't even know what type of yoga that is. I just kept doing it, and my back got better, and I found that like this really simple yoga practice that I've added on to and changed over the years. It was one of the only things that I could do in hotel rooms to stay relatively sane and healthy on tour. So to answer your question, what types of yoga I've done, so I've done a very simple Ashtanga practice, whatever practice is in the yoga deck, yin yoga, if that's even a thing, vinyasa flow. The practice that I have, I don't know what really any of the poses are called. So it's like an hour-long practice, but I don't really know what anything's called except for the basic, like Shavasana. So I'll go to take classes every now and then, and the teacher will say the name of a pose, and I have no idea what they're talking about. Like, I'll know the pose, and I will have done it hundreds of times, but I don't actually know what it's called.
And so how often do you practice now?
Ideally 5 days a week, but I try and also change the practice. So some of the things that involve a little bit of strain, I try not to do those every day.
Tell me something about how you've changed and transformed your yoga practice and recognizing these things about yourself.
Well,
and how your practice has changed and what inspires you now with the yoga.
Well, when I first started the practice I'm doing now, which is I guess about 3 or 4 years ago, it was very simple, and one of my goals was to have something to do in hotel rooms and to try and make my back feel better. So my practice had a really nice, naive quality to it. And then a year and a half or 2 years passed, and I kept adding on to the practice, and then I started taking classes with random other people. And some of the classes were great, but I found myself competing. Like I'd look around the class and I'd figure out like who was I better than and who was better than me, and I wanted to impress the teacher, and so he or she would say like, oh, go into this posture and like really go into it, and I'd like really like strain and try and do things better, and that it played into like almost like insecure type A part of myself, where I wanted to compete with other people and I wanted to be better. A few things happened. One, I started hurting myself. And the goal of my yoga practice is not to hurt myself, but I was pushing myself too much. And so I decided to sort of like take a step back and not do competitive yoga. And also, I started looking at the yoga world around me, and I saw this ethos of competition and ethos of striving. And I realized that I don't want to be a part of it. Like going to yoga classes and thinking like, oh, you're going to be the best yoga guy you can be. It's like, I'm pretty happy to have a healthy, balanced practice. I decided about 6 months ago that I never want to be good at yoga. You know, I never want to compete with anyone or compare my practice to anyone else's. I just simply want to have a practice from which I derive benefit.
I think there's a lot of value to doing a practice on yourself. That's ideally what yoga is for. It's not about just going to classes. But physically, when you do your practice on your own, you know, what happens to you?
Well, I have 3 goals in my yoga practice. There's the immediate goal, the short-term goal, and the long-term goal. The immediate goal is to just enjoy the practice while I'm doing it. And that I do. The short-term goal, which is I'd say is like, could be measured in weeks or months, is to have increased short-term health and flexibility and clarity and happiness. And then the long-term goal, which I could measure in years and decades, is to ideally be healthy physically and mentally as I get older. Because I look at the world in which we live, and I see a lot of people, especially as they get older, battling maladies that could be avoided. You know, and I think that a yoga practice, both in terms of increasing strength, increasing flexibility, increasing bone density, and also its sort of spiritual development and psychological help, can enable people, or me, to live longer and live happier or more disease-free lives. There's this one pose, and the first 10 times I did it, I had honest-to-goodness panic attacks. I guess around the 10th time, I just started laughing. And so this same pose that gave me panic attacks now is very comfortable and restorative to me.